The snow crunched under our boots as Lily and I stepped out of the car, the cold biting at my fingertips, even through my gloves. Victoria's mansion loomed ahead, all sharp angles and frosted windows, like something ripped from a home decor magazine. It wasn't a house, it was a statement, perched on a hill in upstate New York, screaming wealth and distance. I hadn't been here in 3 years, not since the fight that tore us apart, and every step toward the front door felt like walking into a memory I'd rather forget. Lily, though, was practically bouncing, her scarf slipping off one shoulder as she clutched a small bag of gifts she'd spent weeks making. Her eyes sparkled with that kind of hope only a 9-year-old can carry, the kind that makes you want to believe in miracles, even when you know better. Before I go further, let me pause for a moment. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon to stay updated with all our latest stories. Your support means the world. If you find this video valuable, please give it a thumbs up. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. Now let's dive into the story. I'm Chloe, 35, single, and probably not what you'd call a success story by my sister's standards. Lily isn't my daughter, but she might as well be. She's my best friend's kid, entrusted to my care after a car accident stole her mom 2 years ago. Lily's got this way about her, quiet but fierce, like she's piecing the world together one question at a time. When she asked about my family a month ago, her voice small over a bowl of cereal, I couldn't lie. "Do you have a sister?" she'd said, and I'd nodded, swallowing the bitterness that came with Victoria's name. When she begged to meet her to spend Christmas with real family, I caved, against every instinct screaming to stay away. I wanted her to have what I never did, a holiday that felt whole, even if it was built on fragile hope. The driveway stretched endlessly, lined with perfectly trimmed hedges, dusted with snow. I adjusted Lily's coat, her mismatched buttons catching the light. "You ready, kiddo?" I asked, forcing a smile. She nodded, her bag of handmade ornaments clinking softly. "Do you think they'll like them?" she whispered, her breath puffing in the air. My chest tightened. "They'd be crazy not to," I said, but the words felt hollow. I knew Victoria. Her world was polished, precise, and unforgiving. Kindness wasn't her currency. The door opened before I could knock, and there she was, Victoria, my older sister, in a cashmere sweater and pearls, her blonde hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. Her smile was all teeth, practiced and cold. "Chloe," she said, her voice clipped, "you made it." Her eyes flicked to Lily, lingering on the scuff marks on her boots. "And this must be Lily." She extended a hand, but it felt more like an inspection than a welcome. Lily shook it, undeterred, her grin wide. "Hi, Aunt Victoria. Merry Christmas." Victoria's lips twitched, not quite a smile, and she stepped aside. "Come in. Don't track snow." Inside, the house was a museum of perfection. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, not a single ornament out of place. It smelled of pine and expensive candles, but there was no warmth, no trace of the chaos that makes a home. Lucas, Victoria's husband, stood by the fireplace, mid-sentence on a Bluetooth call, his tailored suit screaming Wall Street. He gave us a curt nod, barely looking up. Their son, Grayson, 16 and lanky, sprawled on a leather couch, thumbs flying over his phone. He glanced at Lily, muttered a half-hearted hey, then went back to scrolling. I felt the familiar weight settle in my gut, that barbed wire tension that coils when you're trying to smile for people who don't want you there. "Sit," Victoria said, gesturing to a pristine sectional that looked like it cost more than my car. I guided Lily to it, her small frame sinking into the cushions. She clutched her bag, eyes darting around, taking in the towering Christmas tree glittering with gold and silver ornaments. "It's so pretty," she whispered to me, and I squeezed her hand, wishing I could bottle her awe and keep it safe. Victoria perched on an armchair, crossing her legs like she was posing for a portrait. "So, Chloe," she said, her tone light but edged, "still freelancing?" The word landed like a jab, her way of reminding me I'd never measure up. I forced a laugh. "Still writing. Pays the bills." Her smile tightened. "Of course." Then her gaze shifted to Lily. "And you're looking after this one now? Quite the charity case." The air sucked out of the room. My jaw clenched, but I swallowed the retort, burning my tongue. Not here, not in front of Lily. She's family, I said evenly, my hand resting on Lily's shoulder. Lily, oblivious to the venom, unzipped her bag and pulled out a handful of ornaments, cardboard stars and hearts, painted with glitter and care. I made these for you, she said, holding one out to Victoria. It was lopsided, the glue still tacky, but to Lily, it was treasure. Victoria took it, her fingers hesitating, like she was afraid it might stain her. How sweet, she said, setting it on the coffee table like it was evidence to be removed later. Lucas ended his call, finally joining us. What's this? He asked, eyeing the ornament with a smirk. Craft day at school? Grayson snorted from the couch, not looking up. Lily's smile faltered, just for a second, but she pressed on, handing one to Lucas, then Grayson. I made them for everyone, she said, her voice softer now. Lucas raised a brow, turning the star over like it puzzled him. Right. Thanks, kid. Grayson didn't even take his, just waved it off. I'm good. I watched Lily's shoulders stiffen, her hands retreating to her lap. My heart ached. She'd spent hours on those ornaments, cutting and gluing late into the night, asking me how to spell their names just right. I wanted to scoop her up, march us out, drive back to our tiny apartment where nobody judged her light. But I didn't. I stayed because I'd promised her a family Christmas, because I thought, stupidly, that Victoria might see her, really see her and soften, even just a little. Instead, the room felt colder, the silence heavier, like it was waiting for something to break. As Victoria stood to check on dinner, her heels clicking against the marble, I caught the glint in her eye, sharp, calculating, like she was already planning her next move. Lily leaned against me, her bag empty now, her hope still clinging but fraying at the edges. I squeezed her hand, whispering, "You did great, kid." But inside, I was screaming at myself for bringing her here, for thinking this place could ever be anything but a battlefield. Christmas morning broke with a brittle kind of quiet, the kind that feels like it's holding its breath. The living room was a spectacle, Victoria's tree towering over us, draped in gold ribbons and glass baubles that caught the light like tiny, judgmental eyes. I sat on the edge of the sectional, my coffee gone cold, watching Lily kneel by the tree, her fingers tracing the edges of a red ornament like it might whisper a secret. She'd been up since dawn, buzzing with excitement, her eyes bright despite the chill we'd felt since arriving. I wanted to freeze her there, in that moment of pure anticipation, before anything could dim her spark. Victoria swept in, a vision in emerald silk, her smile as curated as the room. Time for presents, she announced, her voice carrying that rehearsed cheer I remembered from childhood, the kind she used when she wanted to control the show. Lucas lounged by the fireplace, sipping something amber from a crystal glass, while Grayson slouched on the couch, earbuds dangling like he was only half present. The air felt heavy, charged with something I couldn't name but could feel, like static before a storm. Gifts were handed out with mechanical precision. Lucas got a monogrammed leather wallet, Grayson a sleek smartwatch that made him roll his eyes. Victoria opened a velvet box from Lucas, a diamond bracelet that glittered coldly against her wrist. She cooed her thanks, but her eyes were on Lily, sharp and unreadable. I got a generic candle, the kind you'd grab from a clearance bin, wrapped in tissue paper that smelled faintly of department store perfume. I forced a thank you, my voice tight, and set it aside. Lily watched it all, her hands folded in her lap, patient, expectant, her small gift for Victoria, a folded card she'd guarded like treasure, resting beside her. Finally, Victoria reached under the tree, pulling out a box wrapped in silver paper, tied with a crimson bow so perfect it looked machined. For Lily, she said, her tone syrupy, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. She crossed the room and placed it in Lily's hands, her movements deliberate, like she was setting a trap. Lily's face lit up, her fingers trembling as she took it. "Thank you, Aunt Victoria," she whispered, her voice so earnest it made my chest ache. She set the box in her lap, running her hands over the paper, savoring every crease and fold, like it was the first gift she'd ever gotten. The room went still. No clinking glasses, no rustling paper, just the soft crackle of the fireplace and Lily's careful breaths. I leaned forward, my heart thudding, some instinct telling me to brace. She peeled back the tape, slow and precise, her tongue poking out in concentration. The bow came off, then the paper, revealing a plain white box underneath. She lifted the lid, her eyes wide with wonder, and then nothing. Her brows knitted together, confusion flickering across her face. She tilted the box, peering inside, as if something might be hiding in the shadows. But there was nothing. No tissue, no ribbon, no gift. Just empty cardboard staring back. Lily blinked, her hands frozen on the edges. The silence stretched, taut and unbearable, until Victoria laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that cut through the room like glass. "What did you expect, sweetheart?" she said, leaning back in her chair, one leg crossed over the other. "The world doesn't owe you anything." Lucas smirked, swirling his drink. "Kids these days," he muttered, "think they're entitled to everything." Grayson glanced up from his phone, his expression blank, but his eyes lingered on Lily, like he was seeing her for the first time. My heart plummeted, a sick heat rising in my chest. I opened my mouth to speak, to say something. Anything. But the words stuck, jagged and useless, in my throat. I looked at Lily, expecting tears, expecting her to crumble. But she didn't. Her lips pressed tight, her chin quivering just enough to betray the hurt. She set the box down, her movements careful, deliberate, like she was afraid to break it, or herself. "It's okay," she whispered, so soft I almost missed it. She glanced at me, her eyes searching, not for rescue but for understanding, asking if she should pretend it didn't sting. I couldn't move. My hands gripped the edge of the couch, knuckles white, my mind screaming at me to stand up, to grab her and run, to shield her from this cruelty I should have seen coming. But I didn't. I sat there, paralyzed by the weight of my own history with Victoria, by the years I'd learned to smile through her barbs, to nod and take it, because fighting back only made it worse. Lily's gaze held mine, and in that moment, I hated myself. I hated that I'd brought her here, that I'd let her hope for warmth from a woman who'd forgotten what it meant. I hated that I was failing her, right there, in front of everyone. Victoria tilted her head, watching Lily like a scientist studying a specimen. "Don't look so disappointed," she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "You're young. Plenty of time to learn how things really work." Lucas chuckled, low and smug, and I felt it like a punch to the gut. Grayson shifted, his phone forgotten, his jaw tight, but he said nothing. The room was a vice, squeezing tighter with every second, and I could feel Lily shrinking beside me, her light dimming under their stares. Then Lily moved. Her hand brushed the empty box, fingers lingering on the open flap, and her shoulders straightened, just a fraction. She didn't cry, didn't flinch. Instead, she reached for her card, the one she'd made for Victoria, and held it close, like it was armor. "It's okay," she said again, louder this time, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She looked at me, and there was something in her eyes, not defeat, not yet, but a quiet resolve that made my breath catch. I didn't know what she was planning, but I knew this wasn't over. The air shifted, heavy with the promise of something coming, something none of us were ready for. The silence in the room was suffocating, like the air had turned to glass, ready to shatter with the slightest move. Lily sat beside me, the empty box still in her lap, its open flaps a silent accusation. Victoria's laugh lingered, sharp and cold, echoing in my ears as I tried to find my voice, to say something to fix this, to shield Lily from the cruelty that had just been flung at her. But my throat was tight, my hands useless, clenched in my lap. I could feel Grayson's eyes darting between us, his phone forgotten, and Lucas's smirk burning into the side of my head. The fire crackled, oblivious, while the Christmas tree glittered like it was mocking us all. Then Lily moved. Her small hand reached into the pocket of her coat, which she'd draped over the couch, and pulled out a folded piece of cardstock, no bigger than a postcard. It was creased with care, the edges worn from how often she'd handled it, making sure it was perfect. Her fingers trembled, but her face was calm, too calm, like she'd made up her mind about something I couldn't yet see. I made you something too, Aunt Victoria, she said, her voice soft but clear, cutting through the tension like a bell. Every head turned. Victoria raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into that familiar, mocking smile, the one she used when she thought she'd already won. "Oh, did you now?" she said, leaning forward slightly, her tone dripping with condescension. "Another little craft project?" Lucas snorted, swirling his drink, but Lily didn't flinch. She slid off the couch, her socks whispering against the hardwood, and crossed the room to Victoria, holding the card out with both hands, like it was a peace offering or maybe a challenge. I held my breath, my heart thudding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. Lily stood there, small but steady, her eyes locked on Victoria's. For a second, I thought Victoria might brush her off, toss the card aside like she had the ornament yesterday. But she took it, her manicured nails catching the light as she unfolded it with a flick of her wrist, like she was humoring a child. The smile stayed, smug and certain, until it wasn't. Victoria's eyes scanned the card, and her face changed. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. Just a flicker, a tightening of her jaw, a blink that lasted too long. Her lips parted, then closed, and her hands, always so steady, trembled just enough to betray her. The room seemed to lean in, the silence heavier now, expectant. I couldn't see what was on the card from where I sat, but I saw her. My sister, the woman who'd built a fortress around her heart, falter, like Lily had slipped past every wall she'd ever built. "What is it?" Grayson's voice broke the quiet, sharp with curiosity. He stood, crossing to his mother in 2 quick strides, and snatched the card from her hands before she could stop him. Victoria's head snapped up, her mouth opening to protest, but no words came. Grayson held the card at an angle, his brows furrowing as he read aloud, his voice mocking at first. "I hope you smile like Chloe says you used to." He paused, glancing at the drawing, a simple sketch of 2 girls holding hands under a rainbow, one with Victoria's sharp cheekbones, the other unmistakably me. His smirk faded, and his voice caught, just for a second, before he tossed the card back to her. "Whatever," he muttered, but his eyes flicked to Lily unsettled, like she'd done something he couldn't quite dismiss. Victoria clutched the card, her knuckles pale. She didn't look at Lily, didn't look at anyone, just stared at the drawing, her breath shallow. I stood, my legs unsteady, and moved to Lily's side, my hand resting on her shoulder. She didn't turn to me, her gaze still on Victoria, watching, waiting, like she knew something none of us did. "Lily," I whispered, my voice barely there. "What did you?" But she shook her head, just a little, her eyes steady, telling me to wait. I looked at Victoria again, and for the first time in years, I saw her. Not the polished, untouchable woman she'd become, but the girl she used to be. The one who'd braid my hair and steal cookies with me when Mom wasn't looking. The one who laughed, loud and unguarded, before life and loss and jealousy carved her into someone else. Lily's card had reached that girl, somehow, and it was unraveling her, right there in front of us. Grayson shifted, shoving his hands in his pockets, his jaw tight. Lucas set his glass down, the clink loud in the quiet, and leaned forward, his smirk gone. "What's the big deal?" he said, his tone impatient, but there was an edge to it, like he sensed he was losing control of the room. Victoria didn't answer. She folded the card, her movement slow, deliberate, and set it on the armrest beside her, like it was too fragile to hold any longer. Then she stood, smoothing her dress, her face a mask again. But not quite. There was a crack in it, small but real. "I need some air," she said, her voice clipped, and she walked out, her heels clicking down the hall, each step echoing like a countdown. Lucas frowned, glancing at me like I'd orchestrated it, then followed her, muttering something under his breath. Grayson stayed, his eyes on the card, then on Lily, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Lily turned to me then, her face calm but her hands clasped tight, betraying the effort it took to stand there, to give that gift after what Victoria had done. "Did I do okay?" she whispered, and I knelt beside her, pulling her close, my throat burning. "You did more than okay," I said, my voice thick. "You were brave." But inside, I was reeling, because whatever Lily had done, whatever she'd drawn, it had shaken Victoria in a way I'd never seen, and I knew this moment wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something bigger, something none of us could predict. The living room felt hollow after Victoria's exit, like the air had been sucked out with her. The fire still crackled, but its warmth didn't reach me. Lily sat beside me on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, the empty gift box pushed to the floor, forgotten. Grayson stood by the tree, his shoulders hunched, staring at the spot where his mother had left the card. The silence was thick, broken only by the faint hum of the heater and the occasional clink of Lucas's glass as he paced in the hallway, his voice a low murmur behind closed doors. I wanted to grab Lily and leave, to escape this house that felt more like a cage with every passing minute, but something held me there, a nagging sense that we weren't done, that Lily's card had started something I couldn't yet understand. I touched Lily's arm, expecting her to be shaken, but she looked up at me with those clear, steady eyes, like she'd known exactly what she was doing when she handed Victoria that drawing. She didn't throw it away, she whispered, glancing at the card on the armrest, its edges catching the firelight. I forced a smile, my chest tight. No, she didn't, I said, but my mind was racing, replaying Victoria's face, the way her smirk had crumbled, the way her hands had trembled. I'd spent years convincing myself my sister was untouchable, a fortress of ambition and resentment, but Lily had found a crack in her armor, and I didn't know whether to be proud or terrified. Grayson moved suddenly, startling me. He crossed to the couch and sat on the opposite end. His long legs sprawled out, but his usual indifference was gone. He looked at Lily, his brows furrowed, like he was trying to figure out how a 9-year-old had turned the room upside down. "Why'd you draw her like that?" he asked, his voice low, almost accusing. Lily tilted her head, unfazed. "Chloe said she used to be kind," she said simply, her words hanging in the air. I thought maybe she forgot how. I froze, my breath catching. I'd told Lily stories about Victoria, careless snippets over ice cream or late-night crafts, memories of a sister who'd once shared her secrets, who'd laughed until she cried. I hadn't meant for Lily to carry those stories here, to wield them like a key to a locked door. Grayson's eyes flicked to me, then back to Lily, and for a moment, he wasn't the sullen teenager I'd written off. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and lowered his voice. "She's got this box," he said, almost like he was confessing. "In her study, locked up. Old photos, letters, stuff from when you were kids." He paused, glancing toward the hallway, making sure we were alone. I saw her looking at one once, a picture of you two at some fair, laughing. She was crying. My heart stuttered. Victoria, crying? The idea felt impossible, like Grayson was describing a stranger. I pictured her in that sterile study, surrounded by awards and designer furniture, hunched over a photo of us, two girls with gap-toothed smiles, cotton candy sticking to our fingers. "When was this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Grayson shrugged, looking uncomfortable now, like he'd said too much. "A year ago, maybe. She locked it up after. Never talks about it." Lily's eyes widened, but she didn't speak, just listened, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. I wanted to press Grayson, to demand more, why she'd cried, what it meant, but the weight of his words settled over me, heavy and sharp. Victoria, who'd cut me out of her life after our parents' estate was settled, who'd called me a leech, a failure, had kept a piece of us hidden away. Had she missed me? Had she missed her? The version of herself Lily had drawn under that rainbow? The thought was a knife, twisting in my gut, because it meant she wasn't as gone as I'd believed, but it also meant she'd chosen to stay cold. The hallway door creaked, and Lucas's voice grew louder, sharp with irritation. I strained to hear, catching fragments, "Letting that kid get to you," and Victoria's reply, low and biting, "You wouldn't understand. She's just like her." My breath caught. Like who? Me? Someone else? The words hung there, cryptic, a puzzle I couldn't solve. Lily glanced at me, her brow furrowed, but I shook my head slightly, not wanting her to worry. Grayson stood, shoving his hands in his pockets, and muttered, "I'm going upstairs," but his eyes lingered on Lily, like he was still trying to make sense of her. That night, after Lily was tucked into the guest room, her small form curled under 2 stiff sheets, I lay awake, the house creaking around me. The argument I'd overheard played on a loop. Victoria's voice, raw and defensive, and that worried her. It gnawed at me, pulling up memories I'd buried. Victoria's face at our mother's funeral, blank and unreachable. The way she'd stopped calling after the will was read, like I'd become a stranger overnight. Had Lily's card reminded her of Mom? Of me? Or was there something else, someone else, tying her to that pain? I got up, unable to stay still, and paced the guest room, my bare feet cold against the hardwood. The card was still downstairs on that armrest, and I wanted to see it, to understand what Lily had done to shake her so deeply. But more than that, I wanted to know if Grayson was right, if Victoria was holding on to us, even a little, behind her locked doors. Lily's soft breathing steadied me, her presence a reminder of why I was here, why I hadn't left yet. She'd given Victoria a gift, not out of anger, but out of hope, and it had changed something, even if I couldn't name it yet. But as I stood there, listening to the house settle, I felt it, a shift, a crack in the foundation of this place, and I knew tomorrow would bring answers, whether I was ready for them or not. The morning sun barely pierced the heavy curtains of Victoria's guest room, casting long shadows across the hardwood. I woke with a start, my neck stiff from sleeping on the edge of the bed, one arm draped over Lily, who was still curled under the blankets, her face peaceful despite everything. The house was quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its secrets close. I'd barely slept, my mind tangled in Grayson's words, Victoria's trembling hands, that overheard argument echoing like a warning. I couldn't stay another day, couldn't let Lily face more of this coldness. It was time to go. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake her, and started packing our things. My hands moved on autopilot, folding her sweater, zipping her coat, each motion heavy with the weight of yesterday. The empty box, Victoria's laugh, Lily's card, they played in my head like a reel I couldn't stop. I kept seeing my sister's face, the way it had softened for a split second before she rebuilt her walls. I wanted to believe it meant something, but I'd learned long ago not to trust Victoria's moments of weakness. They always came with a price. Lily stirred, blinking up at me, her hair a mess of curls. "Are we leaving?" she asked, her voice small but steady. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, kiddo. Time to head home." She sat up, clutching the edge of the blanket, and I waited for her to protest, to ask about Victoria or the card, but she just nodded, like she'd already made peace with it. That quiet strength of hers, it undid me every time. I handed her her boots, and we moved through the room in silence, the kind that feels like agreement. Downstairs, the house was still, the living room untouched from last night. The Christmas tree stood like a sentinel, its lights dimmed now, and Lily's card was still on the armrest, exactly where Victoria had left it. I paused, tempted to pick it up, to see what had shaken her so deeply, but it felt wrong, like stealing something private. Instead, I guided Lily toward the door, our bags slung over my shoulder, ready to leave this place behind. We were halfway to the car when a sharp rap stopped me cold. A courier stood at the gate, a small package in his hands, bundled against the snow. "Delivery for Lily," he said, checking his clipboard. I frowned, my pulse quickening. Nobody knew we were here, not even my friends back home. Lily's eyes widened, curious, as I signed for it, the plain brown box light in my hands, addressed in sharp, unfamiliar script. "Who's it from?" she asked, bouncing on her toes. I shook my head, unease curling in my gut. "Let's find out." We sat on the porch steps, the cold seeping through my jeans, and I handed her the box. She opened it slowly, her fingers careful, like she was afraid to hope again. The wrapping fell away, revealing a small velvet case, the kind that holds something delicate. Lily lifted the lid, and there it was, a silver locket, simple but elegant, its surface etched with a tiny star. She gasped, holding it up to catch the light, and a folded note slipped out, landing in her lap. I leaned closer as she unfolded it, her hands steady now, and read the words aloud, her voice soft but clear. "You reminded me of her." "Thank you." The handwriting was Victoria's, unmistakable, all sharp angles and loops, the same as the notes she used to leave me when we were kids. My throat tightened, a rush of heat behind my eyes. Lily opened the locket, and inside was a photo, small but vivid. Two girls at a fairground, arms linked, their faces bright with laughter. Me and Victoria, maybe 10 and 12, before everything changed. Lily traced the image with her finger, her lips curving into a smile. "It's you," she said, looking up at me, and I could only nod, words failing me. I took the note, reading it again, each word a stone in my chest. Her. Not me, not exactly. Our mother, maybe, or the sister Victoria used to be. Lily's card, her simple hope, had reached something I'd thought was lost, and this locket was proof, a gesture I hadn't dared expect. "Do you like it?" I asked, my voice thick. Lily clutched it to her chest, her eyes shining. "It's perfect," she said, and for the first time since we'd arrived, she looked whole, like the hurt of yesterday had been stitched shut. We sat there, the snow falling softly around us, until a shadow moved behind the gate. Grayson, bundled in a hoodie, stepped out, his breath puffing in the air. He stopped short, like he hadn't expected us, then shoved his hands in his pockets. "You're leaving?" he asked, his voice rough. I nodded standing, but before I could speak, he pulled something from his pocket, a crumpled photo, edges worn, and pressed it into my hand. "Found this," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "In her study. Thought you should have it." I unfolded it, my hands unsteady. It was the same image as the locket, us at the fair laughing, but the back had a date, scrawled in faded ink. 2 weeks before Mom died. Grayson's voice was low, almost a whisper. She never forgave herself for fighting with her that day. He turned away, heading back to the house, leaving me with the photo and a truth I hadn't been ready for. Victoria's coldness, her walls, it wasn't just about me. It was grief, guilt, a wound she'd carried alone. Lily slipped her hand into mine, the locket now around her neck, its chain glinting faintly. "What did you mean in your card?" I asked, needing to understand. She looked up, her gaze clear. "I just wanted her to remember she's not alone," she said, and I pulled her close, my heart full and aching. Victoria hadn't come out to face us, but this locket, this note, it was her reaching back in the only way she knew how. And for now, it was enough. The snow crunched under our boots as we walked to the car, the weight of our bags lighter than the heaviness in my chest. Lily's hand was warm in mine, the locket glinting at her neck, a small beacon of something new. Hope, maybe, or the start of forgiveness. Victoria's mansion loomed behind us, its windows dark, its silence louder than any goodbye. I glanced back once, half expecting to see her silhouette in the doorway, but the house was still, unyielding, just as she'd always been. Yet, as we passed the living room window, I saw it, Lily's card, propped on the mantel, its colors stark against the sterile decor. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me pause, to feel the crack in this place widen just a little. Lily climbed into the back seat, buckling herself in with care, her fingers brushing the locket like it was a talisman. I slid behind the wheel, the engine humming to life, and stole a glance at her in the rearview mirror. Her face was calm, but her eyes held that quiet depth, the kind that saw more than she said. "You okay, kiddo?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant it to be. She nodded, her lips curving slightly. "I'm glad we came," she said, and I felt a pang, wondering how she could find light in a place that had tried so hard to dim her.